Okay. We'll just give it a minute while we have folks coming in. Just give it a couple more minutes. I want to welcome everybody. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, my name is Heather Long and I'm the Director of Family Support Services here at the ARC of San Antonio. And we're excited that you're joining us today for our Self-Care for the Caregiver webinar. And it was made possible today through the Harvey E. Najum Charitable Foundation. So we're very grateful for that funding. We just, through conversation here at the ARC with staff and with families, we just know that self-care is critical right now. And our speaker today, Sandra, she's going to share tips and resources for taking care of yourself and reinforcing self-care for others. So we're very happy to have her with us today. Let me just take a few moments for some basic housekeeping. Folks have been muted and the video will, folks' video will not be shown. And we also just ask that if you have any questions, to go ahead and put them in the Q&A section down at the bottom, and we'll address those throughout the presentation today. I just want to say Sandra is with us, and Sandra is quite an amazing lady. She's the owner of Forever Hope Counseling and Educational Services, and she's a nationally certified licensed professional counselor supervisor specializing in counseling children, teens, adolescents, parents, and families. She's worked as a family support caseworker. She's worked in the school system as a counselor and special education teacher, working with emotionally disturbed students for over 10 years. Currently, she's working on her PhD in counselor supervision and education at St. Mary's University, and she has received extensive specialized training and assessments, testing in areas of clinical diagnosis and treatment of autism spectrum disorder, oppositional defiance disorder, bipolar, anxiety, depression, selective mutism, as well as a variety of other conditions. And Sandra has just been always a go-to for me in this community. And before we get started, I just want to say that Sandra has been gracious to say that within her practice, she's donating free consultations, which is a value of $185 to meet one-on-one with a family to talk about their needs. And she's able to do that face-to-face or Zoom. And so we will follow up with information how to get in touch with her if this is something you're interested in. Just make sure you mention that you saw Sandra on our Caregiver Zoom. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sandra so she can go ahead and get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. That was such a sweet introduction. Thank you so much. It's very humbling to hear all of that. I want to thank you, first of all, for doing this. I think that this topic in general is such an important topic when we think about our caregivers and people who are caring for others. That's a very big job. And there are millions of people out there caring for family members. And so today we get a small treat to be able to talk to our local community and whoever else it is that is tuning in today. So I think that that's an amazing opportunity to talk about such an important topic. And I do know that I only have an hour, so I have tried the best I can to come up with a very valuable presentation that would give a lot of information in a short period of time. And hopefully what I'm hoping the viewers can do is sift through this information and pull out from today's webinar what's going to be most helpful to them. So whether they are a grandparent or a parent or a sibling or a court-appointed legal guardian or whoever it may be, there are going to be different suggestions and ways that I'm going to bring today to be able to share with ways we can self-care and good reminders, and maybe hopefully a lot of good information you didn't already know so that you can pull that away and take it with you. So we're going to get started. I do love questions, and so if you have questions like Heather mentioned earlier, you can ask those questions at any time, and as I see those questions, I will definitely get to them during the presentation. So let's start with something at the very beginning of this topic. I think it's a good idea to say that caregivers are usually the last people they are worried about, meaning they're really not thinking of the rest that they need, the physical attention that they need in regards to their own health and wellness. And so by talking about self-care today, I really want to point out that it's going to open your eyes on the importance of a caregiver, so to speak, putting on their oxygen mask first before they're putting the oxygen mask on the person that they're caring for. We're very good about putting on the oxygen mask for others, and sometimes we forget to put our own mask on. And so with that concept in mind, I want you to enjoy listening to this presentation that's actually going to give you permission, encouragement, and hopefully stress to you the importance of putting on that oxygen mask and caring for yourself. Being able to do this guilt-free. I hear a lot of parents say that they feel guilty sometimes when they carve out time alone. And that's kind of a mindset that we have to change. Because again, if we are not able to care for ourselves, it's difficult to care for others. Eventually that will take a toll on you. So let's get into some ideas on healthy ways to cope with stress. Before I delve into a lot of different ways for you, I want to remind you that these are not taking the place of a crisis. So if you are in crisis, you wouldn't necessarily use these ways to cope with the crisis. These are self-care, very more preventative than responsive. If you're ever in crisis, you would need to go to your local authority and get the crisis care you need in that particular moment. So know when and where and how to get treatment. And we'll cover some of that towards the end. But for right now, let's go ahead and start with taking care of your own emotional health. I'm going to try to give you an easy way to remember this. We're going to use our hand. And so we're going to say the first one is taking care of you and your exercise routine. Being able to do physical care for yourself, that would mean anything from getting a daily walk-in or maybe a yoga. Nowadays, we get to bring it to us on apps, great apps that are available to us. So walking, doing yoga, doing some meditation, if you'd like to jog, something like that, being able to do some stretches. I find that people are in a variety of physical fitness levels. Some are very, very beginners. Some have never exercised. Some used to exercise, but now don't have time to exercise. we have to carve out this physical component of exercise. That's the very first thing that comes to mind on my hand of the big five. The other one, the second one, is sleep. Sleep is phenomenal. If we go too long without sleep and we're sleep deprived, we experience fatigue. We experience sometimes even mood disruptions where we're grouchy and cranky and we can't tolerate some of the stress that we're under. Sleep is very, very important. There's actually a study that talks about sleep being done before the midnight cutoff. Some people believe as long as they get their 7 hours or their 8 hours of sleep, that they're okay. Well, the truth is, the studies show that if you get pre-midnight sleep, that gives you a better deep sleep. And we're really aiming for REM sleep. So if you can get yourself on a sleep routine, hopefully getting to bed by 9 at the latest, maybe 10, that is kind of the red area, the 11 o'clock, midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. That's the big no-no. We don't want to see that. And depending on the person that you're caring for, their needs may be different that cause you to be up late. Just keep in mind that sleep routine is very, very important. Once you get to sleep, you want to maintain sleep throughout the night and not have a broken sleep, because if you get 4 hours here and then you're up for a while and then you try to get your 4 hours later, that's not the same as getting 8 hours straight consecutive sleep. So the first one was exercise and daily physical movement. Even if you're not using weights, it's just stretching your body, moving your body. If you think in terms of moving your body, doing it in any way you feel comfortable, that you can do on a regular, consistent basis. Physicians will say they want you doing it 4 to 5 times a week. I say aim for every day. That way you get your 4 to 5 times out of the week, hopefully accomplished. And then the second one was sleep. Next one would be the third out of the 5. That's going to be your nutrition, eating. How do you eat? What do you eat? What's the frequency of your meal and what you're eating? So you want to look at a plate and see lots of color on that plate, different fruits and vegetables, meat, protein, a good healthy type of carb, and something that's a healthy fat. Avocados are notorious for bringing just wonderful health benefits to that. Avocado are just everywhere. So think of good, colorful food. If your food is mostly beige and doesn't have a lot of color to it, it's probably not the healthiest diet. So you could go as far as finding a nutritionist to work with. You could do some research of your own online, or you could just think of a plate and putting colorful food on it. So some red, some green, some yellow, some orange. There are peppers that aren't spicy. There's fish, there's chicken. Turkey is known to bring down aggressiveness. Think about maybe the people you're caring for, and just natural ways of helping them would be giving them a better diet. And so finding ways to combat just, what you're struggling with on a day-to-day through food can be very interesting. We've heard a lot about removing gluten from the diet, which is another beige food. And so just thinking of what would be applicable to your situation, your child, finding out with your doctor what they believe as well, getting approval and those kinds of things is always important. But aim for color in your diet. So the first one we talked about is physical, like keeping your movement, keeping moving. Think of it in terms of exercise. And then the second one is sleep. The third one was nutrition. So the last two are going to be balancing work and play. And work, even if you're not out in the workforce, working outside of the home, taking care of somebody is work, obviously. And so that is your work. Whether you're receiving financial monetary payment for it, or just the fact that you are doing the work, that is work for you. You have to balance those last two. It shouldn't be, I work all day and then I'm flat out tired at the end of the day. I fall into bed, wake up and do it all over again the next day. You've got to balance that with some play. And what does play look like? It could be a variety of things. It could be that you are taking a nice warm bubble bath. It could be that you're reading a book, or you're learning a new craft, or you have a pet and you're spending time with your pet. What are things that you find enjoyable and fun, either alone with no one else or with someone else? You know, it's just where you're having time to enjoy life. If you forgot what it's like to enjoy life, that's not good. So there are a lot of different things we can do to inventory ideas of things that maybe you need to tap back into. So we're going to go over a nourishment list in just a few minutes. Don't worry about that. Taking breaks is important. Everybody needs a break. So how do you know when you need a long break or a short break? I always say come up for air. If you are having trouble getting through your day, if you are realizing that maybe you're a little more agitated, a little more frustrated, if you feel like, oh, I'm getting frustrated easily, chances are one of those 5 areas that we just reviewed need a little adjusting. Maybe you're not getting the movement and the stress release that comes with that. Maybe you're not getting enough sleep. Or could it be that you're hungry? You know, different things in your big five areas affect how your output is going to look. And so pay attention to those clues. If you are overwhelmed, if you're emotionally drained, if you're crying easily, if you're snapping around at everybody and having a hard time getting along with the people you love, that's a clue that you're overwhelmed. And it's time to step up on the self-soothe and the self-care that's needed. Okay, speaking of our self-soothing, there's another little way to kind of keep on track of movement with mindfulness and self-care. The term mindfulness is really a way for us to understand that we need to be intentional. So when I say intentional, that means really understanding what is absorbing, what is coming into us sensory-wise. We absorb things through our senses, and so it's how we see things, how we hear things, how we feel things. It's even how we smell and taste things. We have to be mindful of these ways. And so a really neat little mindfulness exercise could be something simple. I'm going to bring a little prop here. In honor of Thanksgiving month coming up this month, I have a little spiced pumpkin candle. And so if I wanted to practice being mindful, what I would do is I would hold this little candle and I would kind of pay attention to the weight of the candle, how that feels. I might even smell this candle and kind of smells a little bit like pumpkin pie. So that kind of takes me away a little bit. I'm not thinking of anything else at this moment but this spiced pumpkin candle. So you can do mindfulness with almost anything. It doesn't have to be something you can smell. You could have something soft and smooth that you're just kind of feeling the texture. When we practice mindfulness in the office, sometimes we give somebody a raisin and we ask them to put the raisin on their tongue and to close their eyes and kind of pay attention to what that raisin in their mouth feels like. How big is that raisin? What does it taste like? Can they feel the texture and wrinkles in that raisin? We really want them to focus on that object, and it kind of clears the mind out and gets them grounded where they're not worried about 2 o'clock and what happens after school or how the morning went. It was just in disarray and wasn't really a good morning today. We really want to ground them back into just kind of feeling a little mindful of the present moment. And one of the best ways to do that is using mindful techniques. So a little exercise that you could practice if you found yourself to be going through some heavy agitation, or you're feeling fatigued and worn out and you need a little bit of a break, is to practice mindfulness. What you could do is go outside and think of those 5 things that you can see, hear, touch, smell, or taste. Right now, if you went outside, you would probably be able to pinpoint something of one of those 5 senses and just really tune into that just for a few minutes. It gets your mind off other things. Another great exercise to do would be going outside for the natural surroundings. A lot could be said with the sunshine. It's a pretty thing to look at, but it actually rejuvenates your body with vitamin D and gives you energy. You know, God kind of knew what he was doing when he put the sun out there for us. And so if you're indoors all day and you're not getting that fresh air and walking around and getting that sunshine, your body is being deprived of that vitamin. And when you're fatigued, you need that vitamin. So please get yourself outdoors. Try to do it every day if you can. It doesn't have to be all day. It could be 5 minutes or 10 minutes, optimally 30 or longer. But if you can only do 5 or 10, that's better than nothing. And you will get the health benefit from that vitamin D. So try to absorb that sun when you can do it. If you have some type of condition where you can't get outdoors to do that, I would at least have a window open where you can get sunshine in your room, but some way of getting that outdoor sense, that fresh air sense. It's really just a nice natural way of relieving some stress and anxiety. So let's talk more about some breathing, some taking care of your body. What can you actually control? There's a little exercise we call nostril breathing, and it's going to feel a little bit funny at first, but you're going to see a difference that it makes. So since we're not all on camera, you get to do this in the comfort of your home or in your office, and I want to try it with you. Tell me what you think about this. What we're going to do is use one finger, and we're going to push one nostril down, and we're going to take in breath from the other nostril in for 4 seconds. We're going to hold it for 4 seconds, and then we're going to release it for 4 seconds. We're going to do it on this side first, and then we're going to do it on the other. By the time we get finished with the second side, your brain should feel a little bit tingly because you're getting a concentrated level of oxygen that's going in through one nostril, and it's going straight up to your brain, and it's giving you this real tingly feeling. So it's another way to rejuvenate. Okay, so let's get ready. We're going to use our left hand for the left nostril first, and we're going to push it down. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. And let out for 4. Ready? Let's do the other side. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. And let out for 4. Is it just me, or do you feel a little bit of a light head there? This oxygen, that we can do this repeatedly, you could do it about 4 or 5 times every day, kind of gives you a little more alertness. I think it's even healthier for you than a cup of coffee, but it can bring back some rejuvenated alertness and give you the oxygen that your body does need. When we're stressed out, our body tends, the oxygen will leave our brain, and it goes to our hands and feet, our extremities, because it really thinks that it needs to get ready for some bad, awful event that's about to happen, your fight or your flight mode, right? And so we have to get that oxygen back up to our brain when we're stressed out and tell it, it's okay, calm down, we're okay. And so being able to get that oxygen back in the brain, that concentrated way, is a very good practicing routine. If you don't feel comfortable pushing your nostrils down, you don't have to do that. You could still do the very same 4 in, hold for 4, release. Just using your nose only. Try not to use your mouth on this. Using your mouth is a different type of breathing that we call diaphragmatic breathing, but this nostril part, this is the structure that we want to get the oxygen to. When we're using our mouth, it doesn't go to our brain, it goes to our stomach. And so we don't want air in our stomach, we want it up here. So those were the deep breaths. There's another technique that involves stretching. And if we want to use a fancy word, we'll say progressive muscle relaxation. Some people call it PMR. So if you want to practice PMR, it's pretty simple. It can be done for anybody, really, who has the ability to move their extremities. You can do it in a seated position. You don't have to get out of your seat to do this stretch, so it's kind of neat. What you would do is you start with your toes, and you curl your toes in under, almost like I am with my hands. So right now, as you're sitting in your seat, you will curl your toes, and you will squeeze and hold for 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. And after you hold for 10, you release. Then you would use your hands and you would do the same thing. You squeeze as hard as you can, count to 10, and release. Next thing you would do is your shoulders, and you'd want to try to touch your shoulders to your ears, which is almost near impossible, but you would bring your shoulders up and you would try to hold it for 10 and squeeze, 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 and then you would release. You could do your thighs if you were to point your feet up to the ceiling, so you have your foot looks like this. You're actually doing your thigh muscle here, and you hold it for 10, and then you release. The other part are the areas around your eyes, and you would squeeze for 10, and then you would release. At the very end, you get all the muscles that you did individually, and you do it at the same time, where you squeeze all your muscles, squeeze for 10, as tight as you can, almost picturing if you were holding some Play-Doh in your hand, that it would just kind of ooze out from between your fingers, that kind of squeeze. Hold it in there for 10, and then you would release. That is called progressive muscle relaxation. It's progressive because you're doing one muscle area at a time. And if you can think of other areas, that's good. You could do your calves as well, or another area, maybe your arms. The idea is that your body is experiencing a lot of tension and you're trying to release that tension. So you do it by squeezing that tension in and then releasing that tension out. Doing that is better for you than screaming. It's better for you than lashing out at somebody. It's holding on to that tension and releasing it and giving it a place to go. So try that. It's called PMR. You could also probably find a PMR guided type activity online if you wanted to Google PMR and see if there's somebody who could guide you through a longer PMR session. That would be a good idea too. So we've already talked about exercise and the importance of exercising regularly. We've talked about getting plenty of sleep, and the kind of sleep that we know is best for you is pre-midnight sleep. So getting to bed before midnight is your goal. Avoiding alcohol and drug use. This is important, and I think it's really important that we kind of talk about this right now, because this is part of your self-care. A lot of times people will think that resorting to a glass of wine a night is taking care of myself. In actuality, alcohol has some really harmful effects on your body. I'm not saying that you should never drink alcohol if you really enjoy drinking your glass of wine. What I'm saying is bringing it to your attention that you want to make sure you're keeping everything in balance and you're not relying on the alcohol to be your stress reliever. That would be a wrong reason to drink alcohol. If you wanted to drink alcohol with your meal, or maybe when you're at a family event, you're out for dinner, or some other reason you just like to drink your glass of wine, doing it for that reason is very different than I've had a really hard day, I'm drinking half a bottle of wine. And the reason that I bring this up is because this is stuff that we deal with in our counseling. Sometimes our individuals that come in are coming in because they've gotten themselves into a situation they don't know how to get out of. And more often than not, it can start in a very innocent way, and things just kind of get out of hand from there. A recent study has actually shown that women are the majority of alcohol consumers now. And that's very surprising, because historically men have often drank more than women. And now it is showing that women are surpassing the men in the consumption of alcohol. People haven't really been able to pinpoint where this is coming from and what caused this, but they're recognizing that it's here. So how do you recognize when alcohol has been something you've relied on and that it's causing harm? There are probably a good 3-4 things that would bring a little red flag. One, if it's morning or afternoon and you haven't even been able to wait till your dinner. You wake up craving that alcohol. That's a major sign. 2, if you've tried to stop drinking alcohol and you can't, that's another sign. The third one would be is if it really changes who you are and your behaviors are just so different when you're drinking alcohol, then it's probably a quantity that's way too much. The other thing is if you're having, if you take medications and it dilutes the effectiveness of those medications, then that might be another clue that the quantity is too much. So just think about that for a little while. We don't want to rely on any substances for self-care or stress or de-stressing. They're really not going to do the de-stressing that you think they are. They might make you feel better on a short-term basis, but on a long-term basis, they actually increase levels of depression, weight gain for women. We have natural body fat pockets in our body. That's just how God made us. And the alcohol, what it does is it kind of, it blocks weight loss. So if we're trying to like take care of ourselves in certain ways, the alcohol suppresses that ability for us to do it. It affects our hormones and our metabolism. So we don't really, alcohol's not our friend. So if you do drink it, please limit yourself on that. Okay, so I just thought I would throw that out there, avoiding excessive alcohol and drug use. So let's look at ways to nourish ourselves. And there is a handout for this. So hopefully that handout will come out. This is going to be just kind of a general list that you could look at and kind of check off as you go through this list. And you could even add your own ways too. But if you look at this list, there's a variety of things that come up that you would say, oh, I recognize that as one of the 5. Remember, the sleep, the exercise, the eating healthy, the balance of work and play. I think almost all of these will fall under some of those: listening to audiobooks, learning music, to dance, calling a friend, shaving off things off your plate, doing a craft. You know, all of these things kind of fall in those 5 areas. If you can check off, I would say 5 of these, maybe within a month, that's pretty good. If you could do it within a week, oh my gosh, you're optimal level. But if you're having trouble checking off any of these in the last 30 days, that's not a good place to be. So let's work on this. If we go through this list, maybe you can start saying, okay, this is one that I'm going to make a goal for myself. I really want to try to incorporate this more in my life. On this list, it says tap into spirituality. We haven't really talked about that too much. You can do this in a religious way, in a non-religious way. Spirituality is really about taking care of your spirit. There are studies that show that those who have a faith of some kind experience less stress and less depression. So that's pretty amazing. But again, it doesn't have to be something religious. It could be non-religious. Meditation is part of spirituality, and so is mindfulness. And so being able to tap into your spirit and know that it does exist and how can I nourish that, those are some different ways to do that. So on the very bottom, on those blank spots, you would list you know, any area that you feel is helpful to you, that you have enjoyed, and keeping it there. That's one of my favorites, where it says 5 appreciations for every negative complaint. It's so easy for us to come up with something to complain about. I can think of something too. But what really helps me combat that is saying 5 appreciations for that one thing that I have to complain. I have to think of 5 good things going on in my life. And when I do that, that negative complaint seems a lot smaller. Some people will struggle with coming up with 5 good things about life right now, especially in the midst of a pandemic, and political turmoil, or whatever you want to call it. It's hard sometimes to come up with 5 appreciations, but it's possible. It's always possible. And so really taking time to think of, what do I have to appreciate today? What's important to me that is doing well? That can be a very good precursor for the fatigue and the frustration that many of us caregivers feel. So thank you for that handout. There's another handout that I wanted to show, and that's going to be the self-care domain. This self-care domain has 5 different areas in our lives that we should be considering building strength in. And so we've talked about a little bit of this already. The physical part we have talked a lot about. The spiritual part we just talked about. Your social support is very important, because you can't do this alone. You also need support, just as the person you're caring for needs support. It's a different kind of support in a different way, but it is still there. You have your social needs, your emotional needs, and intellectual needs, the stimulation of your learning and education, your mental stimulation. So with this type of handout, you would write in those different domains, how you're feeding those areas. What are you doing to contribute to yourself in those areas? If you have an area that's blank and you can't really put anything in it, then this is a good tool to build. How can I come up with something to put in this domain that's empty, that I need to start paying attention to? It's kind of a good graphic organizer for you, a good model for you to follow. I think what I'd like to do at this time is go into the social domain. So we're going to look at social support, because like I said, we've got to know our resources in the community and knowing who to turn to when we need help. So this is a little sheet that we made to show who can you turn to in these times of need. So it starts off with things like being able to share my problems, being able to talk about a loss, or just get some good advice, somebody I can relax with, or who accepts me as I am, that I just feel like I can just be myself, right? Is there somebody that I can exercise with, or ask for help with chores or errands, things like that. A single mother would probably have a little bit of difficulty filling this out, but if there are other ways that a single mother could say, I have family members, I have neighbors, there's a real good girlfriend that I have, or a best friend that I have, or somebody that I met at the school, I really want to get to know her better, so that I can, get some of these things squared away. If you end up with blanks on the right-hand side of this page, then that just tells you that it's time to start building that support system. There are some unique circumstances that will limit somebody's support system. So this is why it's important to know different organizations, such as the Arc of San Antonio, or other organizations that are in our city or surrounding area. And so having somebody who can help you deal with resources is very important. I was just reading the chat just to make sure I didn't have a question. And again, prayer at the bottom is a very good resource. I probably should have put that at the top. For me, it's something I do every day. And I don't think I got to share, but just so you know, I do have one of my sons has autism. It's a high functioning autism, but there sure is a lot of self care needed when you're caring for somebody with autism. And so these types of things are very helpful to me as well. So Heather, do you know if we have any questions?
So far, no questions, my friend.
Oh, okay, just checking. Okay, so when do we know that we're in trouble, that we need help with maybe some of these, we've gone through so many coping skill type information. When do we know that this isn't working and I need something more? What would be some signs of that? Well, first we want to do a self-check and make sure that we're setting realistic expectations, and that we do know that our situation is a tough situation. So making sure that we are okay in the situation that we're in is very helpful. Having self-compassion, being able to show ourselves the same amount of compassion that we're showing for our loved ones is important. We're not going to have everything down right, and we're not always going to do everything perfectly. That's just not possible. That's not how life is. But when we need help, what kind of signs are we going to see? You may have something like a decreased appetite, where maybe you're not as hungry anymore. Not because you're purposely trying not to be hungry or trying to watch your weight or anything, but maybe you're just not hungry. Kind of your hunger is being affected. Maybe you're having difficulty getting out of bed. You can't face the day or don't want to face the day. It's just a little bit harder every day to get out of bed. If you realize that some of your hygiene is getting, kind of falling behind, it's been a day or two or three or four or more that you've taken a bath or a shower, that would be a sign of some burnout coming on. You want to be careful that you're able to take a shower and continue to take care of yourself. Knowing when to ask for help and how is very important. So if you're in a crisis situation, you always want to dial 911 if there's a crisis. If it's not necessarily a crisis, but it's just where you're realizing you need some help, local organizations are available. Obviously, Heather did mention you could get a free consultation with us, but we're not the only place in town, and you could talk to a doctor and get other recommendations. You could do a Google search for mental health providers. There's different things you could do to ask for help and get the help that you need. You don't have to suffer in silence, that kind of thing. We are pretty much all in this boat together when we talk about self-care and the difficulties with it when we're caring for people that have special needs or disabilities. Every one of us is sometimes at some point in our lives will be 10 seconds away from just losing it. And so we have to recognize that in ourselves and say, right now is a time that I need to either take a step back and come back and deal with whatever it is I need to deal with when I'm in a better mood or a better position to deal with it. Don't necessarily feel that everything has to be dealt with, particularly at that moment in time. Being able to know your limits is very important. So right about now, I would love to have a question. Let's see if we have any questions.
Yeah, it looks like we do have one here.
Okay.
From Miss Anna. Caregiving for an aging parent, would you be able to offer specific resources and advice on whether to stay in the home as the caregiver or if the caregiver needs additional medical or other support?
Actually had the privilege of my husband and I had the privilege of caring for his elderly father who lived with us till he was 95. And when we realized that it was time to have a caregiver outside of our home, or have other people come in and care for him, it was when it came down to his medical needs. And so if you have an elderly parent who has, let's say diabetes or some other type of medical condition that is round the clock care, and if you're finding that you're having difficulty providing that, and that's safety and health. And so really want to use that measuring tool when you have a safety and health issue that you're questioning, either one, if you can keep up with it, or two, if it's the best kind of care he can get or she can get. You really want to start considering whether or not it's time to have somebody else come into the home and do that support for you, and even be able to relieve you a little bit of that responsibility, because it could be very overwhelming for anybody, and especially when there's a fragile elderly parent, it can be very overwhelming. There are personal decisions that have to be made always, case by case situation. So if there's not a case manager involved that can help you make that decision, then I would say that would be a good time to kind of get some professional consultation on that, so that that person that you're having a consultation with can get all of the background information that might make a difference on this advice rather than that advice. But just keep in mind, when there's safety and health involved, we always want to make sure that that decision that you're making is best case scenario for their safety and for their health. It's not just I'm tired and it's difficult, right? It's more like this is kind of medically necessary, and it's going to be the best for both, for you and for your loved one. So that's a very, very tough question. Specific resources I can think of. I would start one with their physician, because usually they have resources when they're working with geriatric patients. Physicians will have resources that they work with closely, that they collaborate with. There are some places that if you're on, like Medicare or Medicaid, they also have their list of resources for those individuals as well. And so it just depends on the needs of the specific needs of the loved one, or insurance, whether there's insurance involved, what the costs are, those kinds of things. But starting with their doctor is a good place. and getting a professional consultation that you could actually give all of the background information so that more resources are able to be pulled together based on individual's unique situation.
And I would just add, Sandra, there's also ACOG. ACOG has Alamo Service Connection. Yeah, in fact, we'll put that information in the follow-up email. We'll be sending out a follow-up email with all of the handouts that Sandra's had today, but we'll provide the ACOG information. Alamo Service Connection has a lot of resources for families that are caring for their seniors, for elderly folks. So, yeah. All right, and so we don't have, it doesn't appear that we have any other questions. Oh, actually we have a statement here that there's a person that works for Best Care Senior Services and would be happy to help anyone who needs care management.
Good.
Yeah, and they left their number, so we'll make sure to, we'll put that in the, also in the information that we send out on Monday in the follow-up email. All right. Did you have anything else, Sandra? I didn't want to cut you off. I just wanted to make sure folks knew about that ACOG.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I could go into 100 different ways to de-stress and just throw that out there. I could also just send that to you too if they want that list. But I think the important message here is I understand that our days are full and that it really does frequently feel like there really isn't any time. And I think that that could be an illusion. We have to learn how to carve out that time. If it's 5 or 10 minutes at a time, and maybe we don't have a whole hour we can do it, or a whole day that we can do it, being able to get on a consistent routine that you are starting your day that way. Maybe like for me, I get up before anyone else gets up just so that I have some peace and quiet before the day gets started. And I try to get my exercise in before others start needing me for different things. And that seems to be the best time for me. My husband's opposite. He does it at night. So it's just, you know, really what do you need and how do you plan to get that in? Even if you have physical limitations, or let's say you have back issues and you can't, you know, walk, or you can't go for hikes and things like that. That was what we did, that PMR exercise. You know, people that aren't able to do long periods of time standing or bending and things like that can still do progressive muscle relaxation. So remember that keeping your body moving is the goal, just in some way, shape, or form. Even in a seated position, you could do different stretches. You know, different types of movements are very important. Getting the nutrition that you need and the sleep. I do hear a lot of mixed messages with sleep aids. We want to try and do it without if we can. When I work with individuals who have a hard time getting the sleep that they need, we kind of have to teach a sleep routine. Because if you think about it, when we were infants, we had someone had to show us how to sleep, right? They had to say, this is day, this is night. And they would keep us wrapped up in a blanket. And some of our parents would bathe us and lotion us up and all that. They had to train us for sleep. And so when we grow up, we kind of do away with that. We get busy, we stay up late, we're watching movies, we're doing whatever, and we get out of sync. And now we're having a hard time sleeping again. So the way we address that is getting ourselves back into a routine and teaching our body all over again that it's time for bed. And so trying to pick a consistent bedtime every night is very important. If you're aiming for 9 o'clock, then every night that's when your bedtime is. If you aim for 10 or whatever it is, same time every night is very important. If you picture an airplane going through the sky, they don't just land like this. They kind of land like this, right? And so your bedtime routine starts, and then you just kind of keep doing whatever that routine is until you can knock out. That might involve taking a shower or having, you know, a relaxing cup of, you know, lavender tea or chamomile tea or something. Doing some type of routine, whether it's face wash, you know, a prayer, something that you could say, this is part of my bedtime routine, you know. Even changing into pajamas can be part of a bedtime routine. Your body starts to feel that pajama material, and just like the baby in a blanket, it recognizes, oh, she's putting me to bed. So think of ways that you would start landing like you would a plane, and get your bedtime routine in there. And so try not to do the sleep aids unless you absolutely need them. And then even then, just realize you really haven't trained your body how to get to bed, and see if maybe you can work that out. There are sometimes conditions that doctors will recommend that, but just, medication should be kind of last resort. I need this kind of thing. And we want to try to do as much naturally as we can, if you can. Do that. So hopefully that is helpful on your sleep routine. If you struggle with the eating part, that's a tough one. I think everybody likes to indulge, and there isn't anything wrong with that. It's just a matter of balance. How much indulging are you doing versus, actually healthy eating? So you're the best judge of that. Try to stick to, I said, colorful foods. Put some color on your plate. Even if you're going to eat out somewhere, kind of be aware and be conscious, and then be mindful of what you're picking on that menu. So limiting alcohol, limiting, fatty foods or beige foods, all of that adds up and can really help your stamina and your endurance when you're taking care of yourself and taking care of others.
Well, that's wonderful, Sandra. I mean, these tips are amazing, and especially the beige. No more beige foods. No more beige foods, right? I want to thank you for your time today. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. We just have a thank you from the audience, and just as a reminder, we will follow up on Monday with an email that has all the handouts that Sandra provided, a link to the webinar. And just we'll have a survey. If there's a future session you'd like us to do, please let us know. And again, we're thankful for the Harvey Nation Foundation for providing us the funding to make these webinars possible. Sandra, I just really appreciate you, and thank you for giving us your time today. And I hope everybody has a great weekend and stays safe. All right. Bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.